Hey, I want to talk about why it's hard to communicate with people in the afterlife. This is a dumb example for this, because wanting to hear from people that you love that have died and gone to the other side, that's serious, and this is Mousetrap. But I wanted to show this because this is one of the most famous complex machines where you understand how each part works and how they all have to work together. If all this stuff in here, like the little stairs and the lever and the bathtub, if it doesn't do just what it's supposed to do and interact with the other systems just like they're supposed to interact, it doesn't work. You don't catch the mouse. That's what we want to have happen, the mouse caught. So for this show, what we want to have happen is somebody that we care about who's died, we want to hear from them. That's the end result that we're looking for. But in that, like in all of life, the machine has to be working. Things have to follow a certain order in order for things to work out their best. The human body has got to all be how it's supposed to be for you to have homeostasis. And the way that the afterlife works is the same. The afterlife is a huge, complex machine. I mean, it's like a really hyped up mousetrap, sort of. By learning what Swedenborg reports about the communication systems in heaven and in the afterlife, we can show how the afterlife communicates within itself and communicates with us. And why it's not that if, somebody I love died, if they loved me or if they're still out there, wouldn't they just come through? It's actually more complicated than that. So to see how this whole thing works, let's start by looking at direct communication. We're doing it right now, direct communication. Here on the physical level of existence on planet Earth, we can communicate directly with each other because we're on the same basic level of consciousness. But there's variation inside that. The more tuned into each other's point of view that we are, the better we're going to understand each other. Sometimes I'll put out a video on this YouTube, and because I'm using a lot of jargon and I'm talking about religiously, spiritually sounding stuff, people who don't have a similar background to me, even within Christian terminology and other things, they'll come in and leave a comment like, "Why are you saying this?" When I'm trying to say the exact opposite thing to what they're saying. Hell is not real. Dante's Inferno style, God tortures people forever hell. That's not real. Divine love doesn't do that. Everyone can see that that's ridiculous. But I'm not here to say that heaven and hell don't exist.
But there is a hell. Very dangerous to be teaching this. Jesus talked about hell more than heaven. Not true. Hell is real, burning, as Jesus said, real. I found the real hell. Jesus said, fear the one who can kill the body and soul in hell. Hell is real.
And I'm not saying that they didn't pay enough attention or something, but I'm just saying our vocabulary isn't suited to that direct communication. So you can have a variation even within. This plays out even more strongly in the afterlife. In the afterlife, having a similar point of view groups people together. This is just like within the human body, you got different kinds of cells together according to the functions they have that form these things called organs and stuff. In heaven, you got people who are grouped together according to their feelings, interests, and skills. So you have a community of angels, which are just people who are in afterlife, and they were drawn together by their shared love and shared beliefs. And this happens all throughout heaven. Each person's overall approach to life puts them in one of these three levels of heaven. And then within those levels, within some particular community, you could be over here, you could be over here, depending on what your purpose is, what your beliefs are. And wherever you are, it feels like home. It feels like this is where I am meant to be. Because this is where the love that drives me and the beliefs that guide me, that's where they live, so that's where I live. This is how Swedenborg puts it in Heaven and Hell 205. All the people in heaven are grouped according to spiritual affinities, which are matters of what is good and true in their pattern. The same way in the whole heaven as in each community and in each household. That fractalism is everywhere in heaven. This is why angels who are involved in similar good and true activities recognize each other the way relatives and kindred spirits do on earth, just as though they had known each other from from infancy. People have these near-death experiences. Like, I felt like I've known these people. It's because you're the same. You have this deep similarity. It could be that it's members of your own family. It could be it's other people. Depends on what kind of affinity is there. And I was talking about the fractals. There's actually a micro version of this happening inside the human mind, whether it's an angel mind or a person's mind. Have you heard of, and this is something Swedenborg knew nothing about, it wasn't made back then, it's called internal family systems therapy. It's the craze sweeping the nation. And what it does, and I'm not an expert, but it has you think of different aspects of your mind as having relationship dynamics with each other. So like there's different characters in there and we're trying to get them to get along. That relates to what Swedenborg wrote, where he compares the things in the mind with the same dynamic that guides spiritual families and communities in the afterlife. He said, the good and true elements that make up intelligence and wisdom are similarly arranged within each individual angel. They recognize each other in much the same way, and as they recognize each other, they unite. If you think about it, the more that the thoughts that you have, the feelings, the priorities that are inside of you have a healthy relationship to each other, and it's not out of balance or something's dominating something else, that we're better equipped to understand life and to navigate life. Swedenborg continues, people in whom things good and true are united according to heaven's form see things that follow in their sequence and how things fit together far and wide around them. So being in heaven is not just you're there, your location is there, you are fit into the pattern of heaven in so many ways. There's a pattern that guides how people are on this level and how this level relates to this level and how this community relates to this community within this level. There's all kind of complexity, just like there is in the mind, just like there is in the body. On the flip side, you can have dysfunction there. Oh, speaking of dysfunction, that angel was like balancing on that one. Sorry about that. The more messed up your priorities get, the more messed up your life can get. This is like internal family dysfunction. So in order to live the life that the divine intends for human beings to live, according to Swedenborg, you have to align with heaven's form. And this is something you align with your actions, but also within how you conduct your own mental and emotional actions. And this is what we've been talking about in every episode. The heaven's form is the divine love powering everything. There are these three levels that need to work together. There's structure to each community. There's mutual love, support, which leads to usefulness, which is that's the foundation of happiness for everybody, is doing what's good and true, doing what's helpful for people. Those are some of the basic points of heaven. So that pattern has to be in there. It has to show up on all levels to make everything work well. This is just like in the human body. There's the goal, which is homeostasis, which is health, but each individual organ has a specific way it contributes to that. In your mind, you have maybe a place you want to go in your life, but there's all these specific day-to-day tasks and routines and stuff that get you toward that goal. In the layout of heaven, there's the grand pattern of heaven, which the intent of that is to bring happiness to the whole human race. And it's reflected in these more specific ways in each community in there. Swedenborg continues, in each level of heaven, this is the form that determines communication and the outreach of thoughts and affections for angels, and therefore determines their intelligence and wisdom. So communication and the mental state of everybody who's living in heaven depends on their integration into this pattern. We're starting to see this mousetrap being built, this complexity coming together. Go back to communication. Because everything is so particularly arranged. When I put this stuff out, I just kind of clumped it around. But the arrangement of heaven, how people are there, is more particular than how the body is arranged. And everything has to be just in its place. So the people on a particular level of heaven, they have a similar general perspective and approach to life. And because of that, there is easy, clear communication between their minds. They can actually, so much so that you can share your thoughts and your feelings directly. Everybody is running the exact same operating system. It's not the operating system that everybody would want or that everybody feels at home in. So there are other operating systems that work just right for these people. There are differences between these, though. But within a group, there's the most free communication. They think and speak in the same kind of, I want to say spiritual language, but there's really only one spiritual language. It's the language of ideas. But there's something about the way they communicate that is particularly suited to them. Different levels in heaven. Even though they're all on the same team and even though they love each other dearly, they're different. And so there are unique hurdles to overcome when we're talking about how does one level of reality communicate with another level of reality. And that's what we're going to look at next. And this will help us understand why direct communication works really well between beings on the same level, like it happens between you and I on Earth, but not so well between here and the afterlife. Okay, let's talk now about indirect communication. So the previous video in this series was called There's a Level in Your Mind That's Only Accessible to God. Sounds dramatic. We talked about how there are these 3 levels of heaven, and the levels are non-continuous. It's not like you just climb up, and they're actually almost different dimensions. Like the difference between one and another is in some ways like if you're a fish living in the ocean and someone's like, come on up onto this island. You can't do it. Each heaven has a unique atmosphere in it that its inhabitants need to be acclimated to. It's the atmosphere that's perfect for the kind of minds that are in it, but you can't just transplant easily a mind. So the innermost heaven, the inhabitants there are primarily driven by purposes and love. That is the core of their life. That's what motivates them and moves them. In the middle heaven, this is obviously a huge simplification, but this is a big part of it. Middle heaven inhabitants are primarily driven by what are called means. I guess you could call them strategies. This is an investigating truth. So this is overall a more intellectually focused part of heaven. And the outermost layer of heaven is people who are driven by obedience to principles. You're saying this is the right thing to do? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it faithfully. So these 3 different kinds of states of mind that find their greatest happiness in these places are on very different wavelengths. So communication can't just easily be direct between these different kinds of levels. There has to be a different kind of connection. This is from Heaven and Hell 207. We may conclude from the way the heavens are situated in relation to each other that there is not a communication of one heaven with another, but an inflow. The third or inmost heaven is above, the second or intermediate is lower, and the first or outermost is still lower. A community of a higher heaven does not have any communication with the community of a lower heaven except by means of correspondences. And communication by correspondences is what is called inflow. By the way, correspondences is how the outermost heaven communicates with us. So in some ways, this is like heaven to this, and this is like heaven to this. Oops. And obviously God is above and beyond it all. So there's not direct communication. There is this kind of communication by correspondences. How does that work? There's 2 ways that God holds heaven together through this. One is there's a direct inflow from God to each level and each individual. Everybody, no matter where you are, you've got God right there in your heart. So, that creates an affinity, a shared characteristic that everybody has in common. Secondly, there's an indirect inflow that goes from God into the deepest heaven, and then through that into the middle, through that into the outermost. That's where correspondences happen. I'm just saying it like with crayons right now, like this goes to this, but it's very orderly and very complex. It would be like if you were to learn about how the brain interacts with the internal organs, interacts with the limbs. Like there's a lot there. It's just like our bodies have to have this very orderly pattern for everything to hold together and function. communication between the levels here has to work in a way that maintains the integrity of every angel's state of mind, chosen state of mind, so that everyone can get what they need to do their. It's kind of like a big company, not to sound corporate, but a big organization where it's like, well, we here in the shop, we need to function this way, and us here in the lab, we need to do this, and us in the management, we need to. Everybody needs what they need. If it's tilted in one way, everybody can't do what they do. It's kind of like that, I think. This is Heaven and Hell 208. Since the union of the heavens through inflow is accomplished by the Lord alone, the greatest possible precautions are taken to prevent any angel from a higher heaven from looking down into a community of a lower one and talking with anyone there. Who would have thought? It's not good for you. The moment this happens, so why? The moment this happens, the angel will lose intelligence and wisdom. The reason needs to be stated. Yeah, that sounds weird. You'd think just angels get along, and the more angels are talking to angels, the better it is. So what's going on with that? Here's a little magic diagram for you. Every angel has 3 levels of life or mind, which are a miniature version of the 3 levels of heaven. If you are living in the deepest level of heaven, that means the 3rd or deepest level in you is opened, and the other ones are closed. If you're in the middle heaven, the 2nd level is opened and the others are closed. If you're living in the outermost heaven, the 1st level is opened and the others are closed. So there's a fundamental difference in the way that you're living, in what part of God's life you're bringing out into the world. This is back to heaven and hell. The moment an angel of the 3rd heaven then looks down into a community of the 2nd and talks with anyone there, the 3rd level of that angel is closed. And when it is closed, the angel is deprived of wisdom because her or his wisdom dwells on the 3rd level with none on the 2nd and 1st. You think about like a coach, and let's think about basketball, like a coach versus a player. So the coach is sitting there in the world of X's and O's and drawing up plays and noticing things. That doesn't mean that that coach is going to be able to step on the basketball court and go play a game. Because the coach hasn't put in any time. He's not doing dribbling drills. He's not doing practicing his free throws. And same thing with a player. Some players do become coaches, and blah, blah, blah. But in general, you put in a ton of work into your conditioning. You put a ton of work into your skills. It doesn't mean you can get there and figure out what should our rotation be, who should sub in and who should sub out, what plays should we call. This arrangement allows for specialization, so that these angels can get really good at doing what they do, which benefits the whole. These angels get really good at doing what they do, which benefits the whole. These angels do the same, which benefits the whole. And so, because there's division of labor, you just can't jump in here because you haven't built up any of these muscles. You know what I mean? I'm mixing metaphors like crazy, but that's what you came here for, isn't it? Actually, this phenomena is according to Swedenborg, this is what Jesus is talking about when he says, "Let those who are on the roof not come down to take what is in the house, and let those who are in the field not turn back to take their garments." What about the other direction, though? What happens? So if you're up here and you go down there, you're out of your element. But what if you're in an outer level of heaven and you want to look up into a higher one? Heaven and Hell 209, there is no inflow from lower heavens into higher ones because this goes against the design. Just like I said, there's in the heart, there's 4 chambers and they only go in a certain order or else you're in trouble. Rather, inflow is from the higher ones into the lower. The wisdom of angels of a higher heaven surpasses the wisdom of angels of a lower one by a ratio of thousands to 1. So you just wouldn't, I don't understand any of the jargon here. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't feel like I can contribute to this. We need everybody to be doing what they're doing. Just like in the human body, you need all the different parts to be doing what they're doing. We need these higher angels to maintain the wisdom that they have because they're part of our link to God. We're downstream on the supply chain from them. It's important to not disturb the kind of state of mind they need to do what they do. And so it is for these, so it is for these. If you apply that to our situation here on earth, then overall, to have angels and people that you love who have died are now becoming or have become angels, to be able to have them really help us effectively, they can't be constantly trying to interface with earth people and getting down into the even lower, the earthly level of thinking with direct communication. But instead, they can help us by connecting to our deeper levels through correspondence, just like these do. So you can't, if it was like, okay, I'll keep going and checking on you. I know they love us and they care about us, but they have to go and start doing what they're doing to help the whole. But that doesn't mean that there's no awareness between the levels. Because I know that would be a disappointing answer. Oh, they're just busy doing others, or they just can't. They're interlevel awareness. So if we get back to what Swedenborg was telling us about communication in heaven, higher angels live on a level that's just beyond the comprehension of lower angels. This is from Heaven Hell 209. Angels of a lower heaven cannot talk with angels of a higher one. In fact, when they look in their direction, they don't see them. Their heaven looks like something cloudy overhead. So just like here on earth, we look up at the clouds, we're like, wow, look at those magnificent clouds. There's like some meaning in that. I don't know if you do that. I do that all the time. In heaven, you look up and you see these clouds. That's actually the angels above, but they're doing such cool stuff. It just looks like clouds. Higher angels can comprehend and actually sometimes see people who are in a heaven below them, but the Lord has to preserve the integrity of everyone's state of mind, so there's a limit on that communication. This is Heaven Hell 209. However, angels of a higher heaven can see people who are in a lower heaven, though they are not allowed to carry on conversations with them to prevent them from losing their wisdom, as already mentioned. Ah, man, but you'd think you'd want these to connect. I mean, we talked about the inflow and the direct connection to God, but there's another way in which that happens, and that is correspondences. And I know I keep saying that, and you keep saying at home, what are you even talking about? I don't get that at all. Here's an example Swedenborg gave of correspondences connecting the two heavens together.
The thoughts, the affections, and the conversations of angels of the inmost heaven are wholly beyond the perception of angels in the intermediate heaven, because they're so transcendent. But when it pleases the Lord, they are visible in the lower heavens as something flame-like from the higher one, while conversations in the intermediate heaven are seen as something shining in the outmost heaven, sometimes as a bright iridescent cloud. The lower angels can to some extent tell what the higher ones are saying from the way the cloud rises and descends, and from its form.
So it's not just that there would be clouds or in higher heaven, something flame-like there, but you can tell. You can like read the tea leaves. Like, this is what's going on in that heaven. Just like here, we can look at the wonder in nature and see a little hint of what's going on in the spiritual world in a level that's just above us. Also, just like our dreams. Your dreams are spiritual, but they're also like, what's going on in them? That's confusing. There's a symbolism in there that provides imagery of issues of the mind. Also, the Bible has the same kind of thing in it. Actually, the clouds of heaven in the Bible stands for the ideas in our minds and the Lord in the outmost sense of the word. So there is this, you know how I said everything's fractal? This way of there being something above you that's not comprehensible to you, that's true wherever you are. And you can just sort of see through it. Because even the highest angels, that's how the Lord is to them. They can, okay, what's going on with the Lord? Maybe I can understand a teeny little bit of 1% of it. God also has methods for allowing higher angels to appear in lower levels sometimes to teach and to restore order. And that's also the same method by which sometimes we do get visits from angels. And I've known a lot of people who have said, oh yeah, so-and-so died, but they came and visited me, or some being, but it's short. It's short and it can feel constrained. Like they say one or two things. What exactly did you mean by that? But it has an impact on you all the same. And I've given you the general rule, about why there's not a lot of communication. There's always exceptions to those rules. So don't think it's like this strictly never allowed. There's plenty of people who have had plenty of experiences with angel communication. I'm just telling you why, in general, it's a lot more rare than we think it is, because, there's this whole thing going on. It's not just arbitrary, like everyone's sitting around there and God's sitting there with the door handle in his hand and saying, no, I'm not going to open this door. There's a lot of important reasons why the world and the spiritual world interact the way that they do. We actually did an episode called The Consequences of Crossing Heaven's Boundaries. You can check that out for more on the importance of these different heavens and why they're separate. In conclusion, why is it hard to talk to people who have died, people who are in the afterlife? It's because there's a big thing, a big, complicated, purposeful thing going on. We are here, and our spirits are at this level of consciousness. And you need all these levels of consciousness. These function together. None of them would work without the other ones. They all support each other. We have to have this. Just like the smallest little levels of our body systems need the larger structures, need the external stuff. Everything depends on everything else. And it's very precise and very balanced. This system is more complex than we'll ever be able to fully comprehend. Hopefully this basic explanation I've gave can make a little more sense of it to you. And I know that it's not that satisfying of an explanation, because what you'd probably want me to say is just like, come on. Okay, fine, everyone can talk to each other all the time. That's how it's actually supposed to be. This system is actually messed up. It's like with a mousetrap, there's a piece missing. Because long ago, there was open communication easily between all the levels. Because people on earth thought more like the angels in heaven did, and we had more of the same goals in common that angels did. We've gotten over time so materialistic and so self-centered that we just don't have enough in common with the angels to talk and know about their existence easily. It used to be that everybody was viscerally aware that there's life after death. You've seen it. You can still talk to people pretty regularly who have gone there, but that system has gotten degraded, and it still works well enough that everyone can live and can eventually get there, but it does leave us kind of isolated here because we're caught up in this earthly level of consciousness. So the open communications from heaven are few and far between. Now, I think that's getting better. I think that's becoming more common. For some people, they get tons of interaction. But even if you don't, and I don't, so you're not alone, just know that even if you're not getting direct communication, there is tons of influence happening here all the time. There are always angels around us, and they are always influencing us and reaching out to us. Often their messages will come in less direct ways than verbal communication and visual observance, but symbolism, feelings, your connection to your spirituality, they're in there. So look for them, know that they're there, and understand that it's not because they don't want to reach out. It's just because this is how it has to be right now. But eventually, we're all going to be able to chat with each other as much as we want.